All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of the Carvel Community Meeting. We normally meet every second and fourth Wednesday of the month at 8 a.m. Pacific time, but this week we are meeting unconventionally because we had KubeCon last week, and then we have a U.S. holiday, Thanksgiving, next week. So we wanted to make sure we could get a community meeting in before December, because otherwise we won't be able to meet. So here we are today. If you are unable to join us for meetings, let me back up. I am all out of sorts after everything. So a meeting with us is a good way for you to come and meet the maintainers, listen in on what the folks are working on, ask questions. If you need help with any of the Carvel tools, it's a great way to get sort of your questions answered in real time. If you have any feature requests, anything like that. And for those that are on the meeting today, if you do have something you wish to bring up with the team, you just add that to the discussion topic section here below at the bottom of the agenda, and we'll get to it after we work on the announcements and status updates. If you are unable to attend these meetings, there are other ways you can find us. You can reach us at the Carvel channel in the Kubernetes Slack workspace. You can email us. You can find us in GitHub within any of our project repos, or you can find us on Twitter at Carvel_dev. If at any point you are interacting with us or any members of the community, we ask that you please read and abide by our code of conduct, which is linked out throughout all of our repos. Now, we are interested in learning more about how folks are using the tools. So we created a pinned issue in one of our main repos, asking for details on how folks are using the Carvel tools. We also have this similar issue pinned throughout all of the tools specific repos. So instead of it saying, are you using Carvel, it'll say, are you using YTT, are you using kapp? So we would appreciate you filling out a comment here, just giving us your use case scenarios, and optionally adding your logo to the comment so we can put it into the adopters file so others can have an understanding of who all is using the Carvel tools, how folks are using them, and gives them a better understanding how they too can use them. It also helps the maintainers know how folks are using them, and it helps with the whole development process. And also we can potentially ask questions and get more of an understanding and further our development. For those that are on the call, please add your name here to the attendees list so we know who is attending our meetings. Moving on to announcements. So not a whole lot going on right now, but I wanted to mention that we will be doing a KubeCon recap blog post on our experience there. So be on the lookout for that. And if you have anything that you wish to share regarding any of the Carvel tools, or if you are writing a blog post, if you're doing an upcoming talk, if you are doing a workshop or a video webinar, anything like that, any sort of content that involves Carvel, we want to know about it. So we have this sign up sheet of sorts on our Carvel repo that you can click on and add details. And all non-Carvel maintainers will receive a t-shirt as a thank you, and we'll do promotion and all sorts of stuff to make sure we can spread the word. Moving on to some releases that we had. So we have image package 0.39 and 0.38.1. Who can give some more information here about those?
I can give it a go. So for 38.1, we got a fix. There was a problem with when you're copying bundles, and there were situations where the tags that we were generating we're starting with an invalid character that is not OCI compliant for the tags, and that was failing some of the copies that we were seeing. So this version was a fix for that. And 039.0 is the move from our old github.com/vmware-tanzu org on our packages to Carvel dev/image package. This is going to happen, or the process has started for all the tools, and this will have implications for anybody that is using, in this case, image package as a library, because the package has changed. So be aware, if you're using image package that way, you might have to change the package name if you are updating for version 039. Back to you, Nancy.
Thanks, Joel. On to vendor. 0.36, 0.37.
Yeah, see, I can. Yeah, 36.0 has 3 fixes. One is like introducing a new configuration in vendor.yaml that is done by Fritz. Thank you to Fritz. This is like it will sync any directory only. If this flag is true, then it will sync that directory if there is a new changes. Otherwise, it won't change. That is a lazy sync, it's called. Second is yeah, so when we are syncing or fetching our information from a get HTTP and has some tar file. Earlier it was not able to unpack tar file. Now with this fix, it will be able to unpack those files as well. And the last one is we have added a new flag, which is to enable a skip SSL verification when we are fetching files from Git repo. So thank you for all contributions. Yeah, this has actually we have just changed the URL. Like earlier, we were using the VMware Tanzu. Now it will be carvel.dev. So whenever anyone wants to use this vendor as a module, has to use carvel.dev. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Shri.
Just an FYI for this version, whoever creates the PR for this didn't do the full job. So the
Yeah,
auto-generated the auto-generated work, the auto-generated the deep copies and stuff are not up to date on this version. But unfortunately I did not have time to correct my own mistake. Eventually I'll go for it, but I'll try to fix it, but I'm having like some hard time. I don't have like a lot of time, but just be aware that if you're using 037.0 of Carvel of Vendir and you're relying on the auto-generated code for it, the auto-generated code is not correct. So just be careful of that.
All right.
One question about the 036 where the TLS verification change was made for Vendir. Is there a plan to integrate that into kapp-controller as well, where the config map of kapp-controller will enable the TLS disabling verification? And do we know when that is, when there's a planned release of kapp-controller?
We had planned on that, Scott. However, it has taken a backseat as of now. I will update probably in some time. Probably by next meeting, we should have some idea whether we will be able to do it or when we'll be able to do it.
Okay, great.
We'll try and prioritize that, yeah.
Awesome, yeah, that will definitely help us in a few of our environments, so that would be awesome. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on these releases? Okay, and again, thank you so much to Fritz for his contribution to vendor. I know that was a lot of work on his part, and we really appreciate that community contribution. Moving on to project roadmap stuff. What are the updates here? Who can speak on it? K-control release package repository is tar. See it proposals in progress.
I think I can sort of start about the first one. So that's the one our LFX mentee is working on. So there's a proposal up that we're going to review, and he's also working on a POC PR. So that's where it's at. Like we are at a stage where we are reviewing the functionality.
Cool.
So any draw, Praveen, when will this PR proposal get reviewed and merged?
As I said, like I'm having lack of time right now. It's being pretty hard. I talked to Sumik last week about this, and I'm waiting for more folks to review the proposal before I go back in and look into it. So I'm not right now. Unfortunately I cannot give you a timeline.
All right, so the mentee program ends by 30th November, and that's a tight deadline from CNCF for us. We should have this done before, like the proposal and the code reviewed before, like as soon as possible, because I think there is a second stage of this project also that needs to be worked on. And that is in KCTRL. So right now it's just working on image package. So unless and until we put in some time to review it, it will not get done by 30th November. And that means the project is incomplete and the mentee will not benefit from this program, which is not a good sign. So probably a couple of hours from you all is what I request. Thanks, Praveen.
Okay, yeah, Praveen says he'll leave some comments tomorrow and that he had gone through it once and doesn't have any major concerns. All right. So we have K-control multiple enhancements.
Yeah, there have been quite a few issues that we are working on in KCTRL. I think mostly small issues that I think Madan is working on, and Praveen and Somik are reviewing those, so maybe they can talk more on those. Okay, the lazy syncing one we can actually remove because it's done.
Mm-hmm.
I'll update the roadmap. And we have the proposal done, but we do not have anybody working on these right now. So it's a request for the community. Maybe they can pick it up.
And that's for this one.
Yep.
Okay. And then this one, we're just still awaiting the proposal. Carvel supports the ability to sign and verify assets.
It's pretty much like it's unprioritized right now. There's a lot of other stuff we have to work on in priority. So yeah, like that's why that does not have a timeline on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds like the team is stretched pretty thin right now. So if anyone's out there and wants to help us, we would appreciate any contributions. Okay, moving on to backlog stuff. So I have kapp-controller, non-blocking behavior for sticky namespace deletion scenarios.
Yeah, I can talk about that. So essentially, I guess just to give some context, right? So when folks are playing around with clusters, they just like to delete namespaces when they're done with it. And when a namespace is deleted, everything inside it is just deleted in a random order. And that's very painful if you're using kapp-controller and have apps in that namespace. Because if the service account gets deleted before the app gets stuck, and this in turn blocks the namespace from getting deleted. So a while back, Praveen had put in this change where if there's an app which is in a namespace and is creating resources only in that particular namespace, it checks if the namespace it's inside is terminating, and it just does a no op delete instead, because it's sure that once the namespace deletion goes through, all the resources will be garbage collected. And what we have done now is we have actually extended this to multiple namespaces, where if an app is creating resources in multiple namespaces and there are no cluster scope resources, then kapp-controller will essentially check if all these namespaces are either terminated or deleted, either deleting or deleted, I guess, and it will sort of fall back to no op delete. So this sort of prevents the person who's doing this from having to manually garbage collect a lot of stuff if they get stuck in that sticky scenario where they don't have a service account to work with. So, yep. So one of the PRs have gone in for this, and there needs to be a slight enhancement, which I'll be sort of putting out actually today. So, yep, that's where we are at with this.
Any questions or comments there?
Yeah, I'm curious if you all thought about using or adding a finalizer to the service account so that it doesn't end up getting deleted. And maybe its tokens too.
It's something we'd considered. Like our main concern was it becomes a bit tricky if kapp-controller has permissions to update a service account which scopes its permissions.
Makes
right?
sense.
Yeah. But yeah, so we didn't want to do something that drastic, and we just did essentially best case. This does not take care of all scenarios. If a package has cluster scope resources, we are stuck anywhere. But it just makes some people's lives easier, right? That's the intention here.
And
But
we would also have,
sorry, Praveen, go ahead.
and we would also have to add the finalizers to the role and role bindings, because without that, the service account won't be able to do anything. That becomes escalation of privileges.
Okay. Anything else? All right. Moving on to discussion topics. I put this in here. So the KubeCon, Cloud Native Con, Europe CFPs are due November 26th. So here's the CFP page. It will go over, all the different types, suggested topics, all that fun stuff. I know it's, less, it's like a week and a half away. I'm curious as to if the team has thought about any ideas that they wish to submit here. I know that, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm working on a few, but it's pretty much a last. Yeah, it's a bit last one, but yeah, I'm working on a few. Like I'll probably share some across with you, so get some thoughts. And another call out, so we have platform engineering con this year, I guess. And I think we have room to submit there as well. It's like a co-located event. Might be worth thinking about.
Yeah, I think the CFPs for the colos are due a little bit later, maybe like a week later. I'll put those in there as well. There could even be, I don't know, even a talk between operator framework folks and Carvel on like, collaborating between two open source projects. If anything, I know we're still working on that, but maybe even something to think about for North America when that CFP opens. And I know that a few folks from VMware, from some other engineers have submitted some CFPs. So start thinking about that. Things that you're working on, things that you're interested in, any people you've worked with from the community on things. If there's some sort of like really interesting use case or anything like that, think about it in a CFP form. Okay, moving on to our OLM Carvel discussion, continued from the meeting we had like what, a week or two before KubeCon. So I'm just curious as to what the updates are here, and just continue discussion there.
Yeah, so Varsha, who's on the call, was able to write up a proposal, which you're showing right now, for adding support to kapp-controller's app CR for OLM's registry v1 bundle format. Varsha, would you like to give an overview?
Yeah, sure. So this proposal basically talks about introducing the OLM registry v1 template options in the app CR. So if we go down the approach section, we introduce the process in which OLM registry v1 bundles are converted into plain K8s manifests, and then we pass it on to the KApp deployer to deploy it. So we also have a POC out for this by Joe, but the intention of this proposal was to get an idea on the changes which are being introduced in terms of the API additions. So any thoughts and comments or improvements would definitely be welcome. And then based on how the proposal goes, we can go ahead by making changes to the PR. Does that help? Any questions or any comments on this?
Thanks, Varsha, for putting this together. Can I request you to add this proposal as a PR to the proposals that we have in Carvel Dev? I think it would help folks to review it there for everybody to have access. Yeah.
Sure.
And
I wasn't able to find that out. So if someone could just send me the link to where to add this, I can do that right away.
yeah, it's the Carvel GitHub/Carvel. In that there's a proposals folder. So let me just add it here.
I put it in the Zoom chat.
Thanks. And the actual review, I will leave the maintainers to do.
Okay. So it sounds like things are moving along. That's good to see.
Yeah, and we had some Slack conversation yesterday or the day before that we wanted to bring to the meeting here today. The question that I asked in Slack was if there would be appetite from the Carvel folks to add optional functionality to the package install API that gives it more more control and behavior around managing operators specifically. And I can list out some of the specifics around that if y'all are interested. And I'll just preface it by saying whether the answer is yes or no is either way is fine from our side. We're just trying to figure out from an architectural perspective for OLM, do we write code that lives in OLM, or do we try and move some of that code into package install? So some of the things that are operator specific when it comes to lifecycle management are keeping track of custom resource definitions and trying to support as best as possible multiple package installs and apps owning or co-owning the same CRD, where the system, be it OLM or kapp-controller, is in charge of determining when it's safe to update to a newer revision of a custom resource definition, and if it's okay for multiple package installs or apps to all collectively say, please install the widgets CRD, and either OLM or kapp-controller will make sure that we aren't rolling back when we shouldn't, and that the updates are backwards and forwards compatible and things like that. So that's one aspect. Another one is around dependency management and dependency resolution, which by itself is not an operator specific thing. But I believe that y'all are interested at some point in having dependency information in Carvel. A third thing is we will be keeping track of the APIs that an operator package or bundle provides. So these are just whatever CRDs are shipping, or I guess aggregated APIs could be in there too. And we want to make sure that we have that information for dependency resolution, but we also use it to simplify RBAC management. And we haven't implemented this yet, but we do have a proposal. And the idea is that rather than saying to the person creating in our OLM space what is an operator CR, and in kapp-controller speak would either be a package install or an app, rather than saying, go figure out what roles and role bindings you need to create based on the APIs that this package is installing. Instead of doing that, inside of the operator spec, we are going to add a section where you can indicate, I want OLM or I want kapp-controller to automatically create role bindings and roles for me based on the APIs that are coming from this package, and grant this user edit and some other user view. And that way you don't have to separately manage for, for this package that has widgets and wombles and whatever else, you don't have to do that separately. What else am I missing, Varsha, or forgetting that's operatory?
Yeah, probably you said it all, Andy, and some additions to the app spec in terms of the target namespaces and stuff.
Oh, right, yeah. Why don't you mention that one?
Target namespaces is a section where we would allow the operator, the OLM operator, or probably the kapp-controller to watch for the instances which are being created. So, for example, the user is intending to create a Prometheus operator, and the Prometheus operator needs to watch namespaces X and Y. Our Prometheus needs to watch all the namespaces. So those are specifically specified in the spec of the operator API or the package install, whichever API we are trying to use.
And that obviously requires that the app in question supports the configuration of which namespaces it's watching, but it's a pretty common practice, at least in the OLM and operator space, to be able to say, I'm installing an operator in namespace A, and I want it to watch stuff in namespace A, or maybe I want it to watch namespaces B and C. And so we're going to have that in our specs. And we're also working on a permissions management model, or not permissions management, permissions request model. So we're trying to avoid privilege escalations and be secure by default, unlike OMV0, where it has cluster admin. And what we're thinking is that the default mode of operation is that whenever a non-cluster admin user, somebody who can't create CRDs, creates an operator, there will be some instances of some CRDs that are created that inform an administrator that the user is trying to do something that would install a CRD, and then the administrator has to go in and take an action that approves that. So we're trying to have some flexibility there. And then I wouldn't be surprised if we also build a component that's opt-in, where you can just say, I trust the users on my cluster. Anytime somebody wants to create an operator and that installs CRDs, just auto approve and auto install those CRDs without involving an admin. But that would be an optional opt-in behavior. As I just go for it, Varsha, since your hand's up.
Yeah, the other aspect, I think you alluded to it, Andy, is the upgrades. It's not specific to operators, but the OLM does a pre-flight check validation in which it checks whether the upgrade is allowed or not, and what kind of SEMVer versions can one operator upgrade to. So right now we use a complicated concept of channels and stuff, but yeah, something similar on those lines, something along the concept of which versions can an operator upgrade to depending on the dependency which is resolved.
Sumik, go for it.
I was just wondering, like, so we just discussed one of the cases in the thread, but there seems to be a lot to keep in context. I was wondering if we could, in the proposal itself, even though that's not something we'll approve, we could add like future efforts or future scope, like a section, and list some of these down, and maybe add some examples where relevant. Might be helpful for folks.
Would it be easier to put that somewhere else, like a Google Doc or HackMD, that folks can review separately? I just don't want to hold up, assuming you all are okay with the registry v1 bundle support. I kind of want to keep it separate.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like as long as it's in one place, I guess.
Yeah, because if we can get the registry v1 bundle support added to kapp-controller, that unlocks a lot of possibilities for us that we can't do right now. So if that's in there, we can switch our in development work for our OLM version 1 to use kapp-controller.
Yep, that makes sense. We can totally do that.
All right, so it sounds like next steps, Varsha will convert the Google Doc for the registry v1 bundle proposal to pull request and get that open. And then on our side, we'll try to enumerate use cases with examples of operator types of management functionality. And then we can collaborate on what you all think is worth including in kapp-controller or not.
Yeah, I can. Sorry, go ahead. No, I was going to say from the user perspective, I can definitely say the two that I'm the most interested in is not a user of operator framework, but the two things that really interest me are the dependency management would be huge to having kapp-controller, I think, as a user, like, and the permission one. Currently, different commercial solutions that use Carvel packages create cluster admin users for every package. And having a feature like that would stop that but from being necessary if a package could say what credentials it needed. So that would be extremely beneficial, I think, for every user of kapp-controller. If a package could specify what it needed, even if it was just saying what it needed in the package, and then there could be a CLI tool that would create the service account and role bindings, or if it was actually the kapp-controller that could do that. Either way would be amazing, I think. Currently, I use a really hacky solution to create least privilege for Carvel packages, and it would be nice to not need to go over audit logs in Kubernetes of what the user is doing and then create the role bindings afterwards to understand what it was from there.
Raveen?
I was just curious about the co-owning part, like multiple packages needs to like sort of go on some resources. I think Andy, you mentioned some use cases there, like multiple versions of package or like maybe same version, but like owned by different communities, or I guess something like that. So in that scenario, is it going to be that one version of the package is installed and then we upgrade to the next version and then and the older version would coexist? Is it going to be like that, or the older version won't be there? Because currently kapp does not support multiple apps owning the same resource. Like there is a way to steal the ownership, but that's also like a not recommended solution. So just curious about that part, because it doesn't matter where the solution is going to lie, whether kapp-controller or LM, we still have to think about the scenario.
Yeah, I just posted a link in the HackMD, the multi-tenancy permission slides, and you do have to join the Google group to get access to it. But to answer your question, the current plan is to create a separate app for one or more CRDs and have the system maintain that app. So if, let me give you the use case. So the use case is there's a cluster that is shared by many users from the same team, from different teams, doesn't really matter. All that matters is that there's multiple users and they independently want to install maybe the same version of Cert Manager, the Prometheus operator, Valero, whatever, or they might want to install different versions at the same time. And so there is no central authority in this particular scenario that says I'm installing Cert Manager once for everybody or Prometheus operator once for everybody. It really is, there's a whole bunch of users who want to treat their namespace as their playground and they can do whatever they want in there and not stomp on anyone else's toes. Unfortunately, custom resource definitions are cluster scoped and you can't say, I want to install a CRD that looks like this, and you want to install a CRD that looks almost the same, but it's a different revision. So that's where we want OLM or kapp-controller to step in and say, okay, we know that there are multiple people trying to install whatever, Valero version 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, and we're going to do our best at the system level to make sure that anytime there's a new package that's someone's trying to install that would be a semantic version update. So I'm going from Valero 1.1 to 1.2. The system essentially would say, okay, we know that the CRDs are already installed. We know this is an update. Let's take a look before we perform any actions against the cluster. Let's look at all of the CRDs that would be getting updated and make sure that they don't introduce any breaking changes that would be backwards incompatible, etc. And assuming that holds true, then OLM or kapp-controller would update this app that represents the one true owner of a Valero CRD. And so in that sense, it's not multiple apps or packages that are trying to co-own a CRD. It's like OLM or kapp-controller is like managing a single one. And we would use YTT overlays to basically take a bundle, strip out all the non-CRD bits and put them into a single app that is in a separate namespace that OLM or kapp-controller manages to handle all of that. And then I did separately want to respond to Scott. The dependency work that we have, the plans right now are being able to identify that the dependencies that are required are not satisfied, but not trying to do any sort of automatic installation for you. So you could say, hey, go install this. And the system would say, well, I can't because you need some dependency. And then if you install the dependency, it would go through.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I would expect. If I have the Prometheus package that depends on Cert Manager, it'll say, hey, I need Cert Manager in order to work, instead of just failing where it does right now, where it half installs the package and then fails because it doesn't have the needed CRD or whatever.
Exactly.
Which makes sense. Yeah, that's exactly what I would want. I wouldn't want it to automatically install packages. But Andy, on what you were saying before, though, how you would have those two operators deployed and one CRD in the end, because you can only have the one CRD, but you would still have two operators actually deployed.
Yeah.
Would you also be changing the fields, hoping that it was built with controller runtime, so it's only watching CRs from a specific namespace?
Well,
because otherwise you're
yes.
going to have two controllers fighting each other.
Yeah, so we would have fields in the operator spec or whatever API it is where you indicate, well, actually, let me back up. The metadata in the package, in the catalog or package repository would say, this package supports watching a set of namespaces, or it only supports watching cluster wide. If it only supports watching cluster wide and you can't tell it watch namespace A, then we're going to have a separate cluster scoped API or a specially designated namespace where singletons go. And you would have to install that as a singleton. If you're installing an operator that supports watching one or more namespaces, then that would be indicated in the catalog, and it would have to support receiving that configuration from the operator spec. So yes, like we're not going to have operators stomping on each other's toes.
So it would basically be an opt-in type of thing if it was specifically specified that we support multiple owners with separation by namespaces in the operator spec.
The multiple owners bit is not
Or
not germane.
Multiple controllers running in the same cluster. If that's supported, then we support it, and otherwise we block it, and that would be based off of metadata in the catalog.
Yeah, just if it supports watching specified namespaces or not.
Okay, awesome.
So we'll write up all this. I'm going to put another link. I don't have it handy right now, but I'll put it in a minute. I have another doc that's a lot longer than that slide deck that goes into more detail with some of our thinking around multi-tenancy management. Some of the ideas in there, like the ideas in the slides, are not necessarily set in stone or fully baked, but it can give you some more insight to what we're looking at.
So I do have some concerns here. What's the best way for me to put this? I do have some concerns about like how we're going to achieve this, and how are we going to make sure that we currently have still works. So, and apart from that, also some concerns on if we think this like feature by feature, we're gonna end up in a spaghetti of stuff. So I think before we do anything, we need to give a step back and look at kapp-controller and see, are these things that we want to include in kapp-controller something that are like easily extensible on kapp-controller, or do we need to do something a little bit more before we even start adding whatever it is? And like we had some conversations about like different things, like there's like some problems of performance. There's like some idea that like maybe the current pipeline that we have for kapp-controller might need to be extended in some way. Like for example, if we want to add an extra step on a templating, on the template, we need to do something, right? Like we need to, if it is like an extra binary, then the next extra binary needs to be added to kapp-controller itself. And we're thinking like, is there like a way to make this more extensible without just packaging everything into kapp-controller that we eventually might need, if you're not using the majority of the functionality. So there are like some thoughts on that area. Like, is there like a way for us to split the work that we currently have that is being done like in this, I'm calling this a pipeline because in the end we have like 3 very distinct phases that like follow one after each other, and that's why I'm just calling it a pipeline to sake of easiness here. But in some sense we have like these 3 steps that happen, but they are very tied to what we can do, and see if like there'd be like a way that we can grow kapp-controller a little bit more. So that was like one train of thought. Like, is there a way for us to add more functionality to kapp-controller by extending kapp-controller itself? Let's call it, like for the sake of argument, plugins? Is there a way for us to do plugins? Whatever that means in this world, right? There's another train of thought here that like maybe what we're looking here is like we need to some way decouple this and have a way we can provide like these more discrete steps, like as part of like something more structural. Like, why don't we have like 3 custom resources instead of 1 that's an AppCR that just populates stuff? Like we have 3 steps of the pipeline, so 1, 2, 3. We have to 3 custom resources, something like that. Another idea here is, why don't we have multiple controllers managing the same resource, and we have some sort of like gatekeeping that kapp-controller is being done. So introduce some sort of like gatekeeping here. And like, for example, like the RBAC stuff, we could have a gatekeeping step where we like kapp-controller will not, if you don't provide, just an example, right? You do not provide a service account. Let's assume that this is the way we're going to go, or how we're going to create the RBAC rules. Like, you don't give it a service account, and from that moment on, package install is going to fail. But there's going to be like a secondary controller which looks at the package install and say, oh, there's no service account. So why don't I just create a service account with whatever it's needed? Like, you're talking like how we find that information or how we get the information. We create a service account, we create the role bindings, we add them to the cluster, and this other controller is like a super user or is given like some permissions. And then it just updates the package install itself and says like, oh, by the way, use this account. This is service account, right? And we can, I think we need to, that's why I'm saying like that, I think we need to give a step back here, since we are trying to incorporate some old functionality that you folks from OLM have. Maybe it makes sense for us to stop and think, how can we architect this in a way that we can extend it easily and at the same time make it usable, right? Because I do have like a real fear that like if we start adding like a little bit here, a little bit there, we're going to end up in a spaghetti that's going to be pretty hard for us to disentangle in like a couple of months or in a couple of years.
I think that's fair. Hopefully we can get the registry v1 bundle support in while we think about the broader architectural vision. But if not, I can understand that position too.
I did not have time to go through the document itself, so I cannot say like either way, right? But I think it will depend.
That's fair. And I apologize, I have to drop for another meeting. So we can certainly we'll get the PR open with the registry v1 proposal and keep talking.
Yeah. Thanks, Sandy and Varsha, for coming today and having this discussion continue. Also, I just want to ask, Andy, I know that y'all have meetings as well. If you have any like public meetings, community meetings, please either add them to the doc or send them to me on Slack. I'll make sure others know, like some of the maintainers might be able to join if we want to continue discussions on both.
Sure.
Both sides.
Will do. Thanks.
All right. Thank you. All right. So that concludes today's community meeting. Thanks again for everyone joining today and providing some really good feedback and discussion on several topics today. If you're watching this from home and you have stuff that you wish to share as well on any of the things that we discussed, please join us for our next meeting or find us on any of the other channels that we have listed out in the doc. We would love to hear from other folks on this matter. So with that, everyone enjoy the rest of your day, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you.